What if you could sit down and speak with your unconscious? Not analyze it, not interpret it, but actually enter into conversation with the inner voices, images, and symbols that move beneath the surface of your everyday mind. Carl Jung found a way to do exactly that. He called it active imagination, and it became the core of his psychological and spiritual life. It wasn't a theory. It wasn't even therapy. It was a sacred method, a bridge between conscious and unconscious, a portal to the soul. Jung didn't invent it, but he practiced it more deeply than anyone else in modern psychology. During his confrontation with the unconscious, in the years after breaking with Freud, he used active imagination to enter visions, speak with dream figures, draw mandalas, and record inner dialogues that would eventually become the Red Book. He described sitting in his study, closing his eyes and waiting, not passively, but attentively. When a figure appeared in his mind's eye, a voice, a place, a mood, he would let it unfold. Then he would engage it, ask questions, follow the feeling. Sometimes he drew what he saw. Other times he wrote the conversations down word for word. The result was not madness. It was meaning. Jung once said, "The years when I pursued the inner images were the most important time of my life. Everything else is to be derived from this." In this video, we'll explore active imagination, not as a vague concept, but as a living practice. You'll learn where it comes from, how Jung used it, what makes it different from fantasy or dreaming, and how it can be used as a powerful method for self-discovery, healing, and inner transformation. Because the unconscious doesn't just want to be observed. It wants to be heard. It wants to speak. And when you listen, truly listen, something ancient wakes up. Not just insight, but soul. Jung discovered active imagination not as a technique, but as a necessity. In 1913, after his break with Freud, he entered what he later called his confrontation with the unconscious. He began experiencing powerful waking visions, some beautiful, some terrifying. He feared he was going mad, but instead of suppressing the images, he turned toward them. He made a radical choice, to enter the dream while awake. He would sit in silence and invite the image to appear. He didn't control it, but he didn't passively drift either. Instead, he engaged actively. If a figure appeared, he spoke with it. If a landscape unfolded, he explored it. He followed the unconscious as one might follow a guide through unknown territory. This process became what he called active imagination, a conscious dialogue with the unconscious, using images, voices, and symbols as the bridge. Crystal ball. What is active imagination? Jung described it as the deliberate confrontation with the contents of the unconscious. Unlike daydreaming, which is passive and unfocused, active imagination is intentional, emotional, and interactive. The process unfolds in 4 general phases. The image emerges. The starting point is a dream, mood, vision, or spontaneous fantasy. The psyche presents something. You engage it. You don't interpret it, you talk to it. Ask questions. Respond emotionally. Let it develop. You allow it to transform you. You stay with the image until it shifts, resolves, or reveals something deeper. This is often symbolic, not logical. You anchor it. You write, draw, dance, or ritualize the experience to bring it into consciousness. Jung often painted mandalas or wrote in symbolic language. In the Red Book, this is exactly what Jung did. He recorded his conversations with figures like Philemon, a wise, bearded guide who seemed to hold ancient insight. He allowed mythic images to overtake him: floods, serpents, deserts, and gods. He didn't analyze them in the moment, he experienced them fully. Only later would he reflect. He described this work as both terrifying and sacred. Balance scale. The psychological power of active imagination. Jung believed that the unconscious isn't a garbage bin of repressed impulses. It's a living system, and it wants dialogue. Without dialogue, it leaks through dreams, symptoms, and projection. With dialogue, it becomes a source of insight, creativity, and healing. In active imagination, you meet your inner figures. The shadow, who challenges your morality. The anima or animus, who stirs your longing. The child, who reminds you of innocence or fear. The wise old man or woman, who reveals truth. These are not metaphors, they are psychic realities. Jung wrote that the psyche will produce what we need in symbolic form, but we must be willing to meet it. Brain not fantasy, but real inner work. There's a common misconception that active imagination is just imagining things. But Jung made a sharp distinction. Fantasy is directed by the ego. Active imagination is directed by the unconscious, and the ego watches, responds, and learns. You don't make it up. You follow it. This is why the practice requires emotional maturity. It can stir deep complexes, wounds, and desires. That's why Jung insisted on grounding the experience, writing it down, drawing it out, and integrating the insight into daily life. Artist palette. Jung's artistic approach. Jung didn't stop at writing. He painted. In the Red Book, page after page is filled with radiant mandalas, mythical creatures, dreamlike figures. These weren't decoration, they were anchors. He painted what he saw, so that the image wouldn't fade. He wrote, "The image is the word that mediates between the unconscious and the conscious." The act of creation, writing, drawing, sculpting, becomes part of the healing. The soul doesn't speak in bullet points. It speaks in symbolic language. And when we meet it there, we are changed. Repeat button repetition and relationship. Active imagination is not a one-time event. It's a relationship. The more you return to it, the deeper the dialogue becomes. The figures evolve. The settings change. You learn their names. You gain insight not through intellect, but through experience. Sometimes the unconscious confronts you. Sometimes it soothes. But it always has something to say. Seedling why it matters today in a world dominated by rationality and speed. Active imagination feels almost rebellious. It asks you to slow down, go inward, and enter the unknown. It honors emotion. It respects image. It trusts that what you find inside is not madness, but meaning. It's not about fixing yourself. It's about listening to yourself more deeply than you ever have before. Jung used this process not only to save his own sanity, but to shape his entire psychology. Archetypes, individuation, the self, all emerged from this inner work, and he believed anyone could do it. He wrote, "Active imagination is the most powerful method I know for integrating the unconscious." But it takes courage, because when the unconscious speaks, it often says what the ego doesn't want to hear. Carl Jung didn't just want to understand the unconscious. He wanted to meet it, to speak with it, to bring its voices out of the dark and into the light. And so he sat. He listened. He wrote. He painted. And from that act of sacred attention, active imagination was born. This wasn't therapy. It wasn't dream interpretation. It was relationship. A conscious encounter with the unconscious. Not to control it, but to collaborate with it. To walk beside it. To let it shape him, speak to him, and teach him. Jung believed that every person has access to this inner world. That the unconscious isn't a foreign land, it's our native ground. And it has something urgent to say, but most of us are too busy, too afraid, too conditioned to only trust what we can measure or explain. And yet the soul still speaks. In dreams, in moods, in obsessions, in stray thoughts and strange coincidences. What if you stopped ignoring it? What if you met it, not as a threat, but as a teacher? That's the invitation of active imagination. Not to make something up, but to let something in. To sit with an image until it speaks. To write until the voice becomes clear. To draw until the pattern reveals its shape. Not for performance, but for presence. Because beneath your surface self lives a world. Jung once wrote, "The encounter with the self is at once the darkest and the most brilliant experience." An active imagination is how you get there. So don't wait for answers to come from the outside. Close your eyes. Open your inner ear. Let the image arise. and begin the conversation.